yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Oh, I can see it now. I can see the love in your eyes. Laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. I can see it now. Sing it. I can see the love in your eyes. Laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Yes.
Are you ready for this? Oh, blind man walking. Blind man walking. Now, this is not really a continuation of the last message, but yet it is. Totally different design. Now, I got a lot of scripture I'm going to read, so I'm going to read it real fast, because I seriously doubt we have read the Bible as much this week as we know we should have. Can I get an amen? I mean, we did not get the reading in we should have. We've been a little slacking. So I'm going to have to take it upon ourselves to get caught up this morning. So you can thank me later. John chapter 9. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Am I forgetting anything? John chapter 9. We're going to start at verse 1. This is where we started in the last blind man walking. It says, "Now as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who had been blind since birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, 'Rabbi, who sinned? Was it this man or his parents that he was born blind?' Jesus answered and said it wasn't neither one of his parents or him, but the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day, because the night is coming when no man can work, and as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." And when he said these things, he spat on the ground, and he made clay with saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." So he went and he washed, and he came back seeing. Number 2, verse 8. "Therefore, the neighbors and those who previously had seen that he was blind said, 'Is this not he who sat and begged?' Some said, 'Well, it is him.' And others said, 'Well, it sure looks like him.' And he said, 'It is me.' Therefore they said to him, 'Well, how are your eyes opened?' And he answered them, and he told them, 'A man named Jesus made clay, and he anointed my eyes, and he said to me, Go wash in the pool of Siloam. So I went, and I washed, and I received my sight.' Then they said to him, 'Well, where is he?' And he said, 'I don't know.' And the Pharisees excommunicated the healed man. And then they brought him who formerly was blind to the Pharisees. Now it was the Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also asked him again, 'How did you receive your sight?' And he said to them, 'He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see.' Therefore some of the Pharisees said, 'Well, this man is not from God, because he doesn't keep the Sabbath.' And others said, 'Well, how can a man who is a sinner do such a thing as this, such signs?' And then there was this division amongst them. And they said to the blind man again, 'What do you say about him, because he opens your eyes?' And he said, 'Well, he's a prophet.' But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him who had received his sight. And they asked him, saying, 'Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he see now?' And his parents answered him and said, 'Well, we know this is our son, and we do know that he was also born blind. But how can he see now? We don't know. Or who opened his eyes? We don't know. He's of age, ask him. He'll speak for himself.' And so that's the reason his parents said this, was because they were afraid of the Jews, and because the Jews had agreed already that if anyone confessed that he was Christ, he would be put out of the church, out of the synagogue. So his parents said, 'Ask him. He's of age.' So they again called the man who was blind and said to him, 'Give God the glory. We know that this man is a sinner.' And he answered and said, well, whether this man is a sinner or not, I do not know. But one thing I do know is that I was blind, and now I can see. So then said to him again, well, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? And he answered him. He says, look, I've told you already, and you're not listening to me. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Ooh, and they reviled him, and they were upset. Said, you are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples, because we know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fella, we do not know where he comes from. And the man answered and said to him, why, this is such a marvelous thing that you do not know where he is from, and yet he's opened my eyes. Now we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him. And since the world began, there has been never heard of anybody opening the eyes of somebody that was born blind. And if this man were not from God, he couldn't do this. And they answered and they said to him, you were completely born in sins, and you're teaching us? And so they cast him out. Now Jesus heard that they cast him out, and when he found him, he said to him, do you believe in the Son of God? And he answered and he said, well, who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him? And Jesus said to him, you have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you. Then he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. And Jesus said, for judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may be blind. Then some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these words and said to him, are we blind also? And Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, we see, therefore your sin remains. Rewind. I cannot believe, I can't imagine how difficult life must have been for this blind man. I mean, born blind, never had the opportunity to look into the eyes of his mother, to look upon the face of his father, to see the sky, the stars, the sun, to see what water looks like. How can you describe to a blind man that water is actually clear and you can see through it? Never got to experience these things. Now, look at it like this. If everybody was born blind, then being blind would be normal. But if you're surrounded by people who were not blind, well, then not only would you be dealing with the sufferings of being blind, you would also be dealing with the agony of being different. Come on, you're going to have to talk to me a little today. And for the first time in this guy's life, he comes into this close proximity to a man by the name of Jesus Christ. And he receives a miracle, a life-changing change. Something that is like an atomic bomb that goes off in this man's life because it was impossible. A marvelous change. A miracle that not only he, but that his parents could have only dreamed about witnessing and experiencing all of his life. And he goes and dips in the pool and he begins washing the mud and spit out of his eyes, and all of a sudden he can see. Now I bet you that there was one consistent thought that ran through this gentleman's mind throughout his life. I bet you he thought to himself continuously that if I could only see, my troubles would be over. If I could only see, all of my problems would just go away. People would treat me better. Well, let me ask you something. How often do we think that if I could get this miracle or if I could get that miracle, that my troubles would go away? How many of us have ever had that thought? You would be shocked at the amount of people who are like in serious financial trouble right now. Been in financial trouble most of their life. Their parents were in financial trouble, and now it is the same for them. And they would get to thinking that if I only had $1 million, if I only had $10,000, if I had $1,000, my troubles would go away. These problems would leave. And little do they know that the ending of one problem is the beginning of another. Come on, talk to me. We as people have a tendency to move into a state of nearly worshiping the idea of getting what we don't have. There are people in this room right now, watching on television right now, that have been single for years, and they're sitting there saying, man, I hate being alone. I hate being single. I hate eating alone. I hate sleeping alone. I hate doing everything alone. I am sick of being alone. If I only had somebody to share my life with. And little do they know that there's a person sitting just across from them that's saying, my God, I'm miserable. If I was only single, I would be free. I wouldn't have to consider their feelings, and I wouldn't have to consider his sloppiness. I'm sick of this yaw-yaw. I'm tired of being married. So, Jeremy, what is your point? What are you trying to say? Well, I'm trying to get you to see that this man's healing miracle may have took care of one problem, but it opened up a whole nother problem. And before he could even get a chance to enjoy this moment of glory of now being able to see for the first time in his life, he moves into a fight of a whole nother kind. The bigger the miracle, the bigger the fight. I want to talk today about getting through with one thing, and here comes another. Talk to me. If it's not this, then it's that. And if it's not that, then it's this. Have you ever had something wonderful happen to you and you didn't even really get a chance to celebrate it? Because you walked into a whole nother situation. Or it created a whole nother world of yucky. So you had to end up defending something that you really wanted to be happy about. Something you should have been able to celebrate. Have you ever had to fight through your own celebration? You're going to have to talk to me better than that. Have you ever had to fight through your own celebration? This is a moment that he has been waiting for his entire life. Beyond dreaming here. And he can't even enjoy it because he's got to fight. And they begin saying all kinds of things about him in this moment. Is this not the man who's been begging all these years? He's a beggar. He probably ain't even been blind. He's probably been faking it this whole time trying to get money out of people because he's too lazy to work. This can't be real. You know, we don't even know what this guy's name is. The Bible doesn't even tell us what this guy's name is. But he's definitely treated like he's some kind of a reject or a second-class citizen. Either they're calling him the blind man or they're calling him the beggar. You know, it's a bad thing when what you're going through has robbed you of who you are. Oh. It's a bad thing when what you're going through has robbed you of who you are. Thank you. I want you to understand that if he was a beggar, then he must have been broke. Because you don't just sit around and beg for something if you don't need it. Whether you're begging for money, whether you're begging for attention, whether you're begging for love, whether you're begging for acceptance, you don't beg for something if you don't need it. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and beg you for a pair of shoes if I got a closet full. Now, my wife. My brain's running. You know, Jock, I love you, baby. We can go to the store. Now, we're frugal with our money. We don't spend everything we make. We live below our budget because we want to progress in life. We don't want to spend everything we make because you can't never go nowhere if you do that. Can't spend all your seed money. So we live frugal. We've lived on a dollar menu for the first 15 years of our marriage. Trying to save money because I want to be able to invest so I don't have to be enslaved my whole life. All right, that's a word for somebody. So we go to the store, and we don't go to Kohl's unless we get a 30%, not a 20, not a 10, a 30% coupon. So every day it comes in the mail, we gather around like it's a newborn baby. Me and Christy and the kids, we're all gathering around. Is it 10, 20, or 30? What do you think it is? I think it's 30. Well, I think it's just a 10. And we get ready to peel that sticker and are all sitting around like, whoa, I wonder what it's going to... It's like playing the lottery, man. To determine whether we get to go to the store. And when we get a 30, we go to Kohl's. I'm usually in there looking for a shirt that has sleeves long enough to fit. That's all I can shop for. And my wife will say, I'm going to go check the shoe clearance rack because we're frugal. Shop on the clearance. Go, baby. Shop clearance. Plus 30%. But don't be fooled because they won't take 30% off Nike, Reebok, nothing. They got like one thing in there they'll use it on. All the name brand stuff, they won't use the coupon. But anyway, so you got to watch that. They'll get you. Anyway, she's shopping and I'm looking at shirts and seeing if they'll fit. And the ones that do fit, they're like this big around. So when they say big and tall, you got to be big and tall. It ain't tall and skinny. They don't have that section. So I make my rounds and I come back to the shoe area and there's a pile of boxes sitting in the floor. And she looks at me with the most beautiful smile and she says, hey, look at this. What do you think? I said, well, those are nice. How do they feel? And she... Seriously, I'm telling you, she's been to modeling school. She knows how to work it. She's walking. She's like, they're really good. They're normally 40 and they're marked down to 16. Plus we have the 30% coupon. I was like, wow. She goes, you think we should get them? Now, when this question comes, I don't know if every man deals with this, but I kind of go into this lockdown mode for a second. My wheels are trying to register. It's not just logical. This is an emotional decision too. So I got to sort all this out. So I go into this, I'm like a robot that you put in like, what is that? Homing mode. And I go, and she stares at me for about 3 seconds. She realizes it hasn't come to me yet. And she goes, baby, don't worry about it. I shouldn't have even asked. I got those old pair of brown shoes that work fine with what we have. So I'm sorry I did this to you. Just don't worry about it. Let's just put them up. Come on, come on, let's just go. She grabs me by the arm and we go. And I'm like, and finally I'm starting to come out of my sleeping mode. And I get there and I stop and I'm like, wait. It's clearance, it's 30% off. She goes, baby, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I don't need them shoes. It's going to be fine. I'm like, you better get those shoes. Somebody else is going to get them. She goes, no, it's okay. I don't need them. Somebody else probably needs them more than me. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Get the shoes. And she goes, okay, well, you're my husband and you told me to do this. You are so smart. You are so smart. I go home feeling like $1 million, man. I sit down in the chair and about 3 hours later, I come the rest out of the way out and I'm like, what just happened? That has nothing to do. Oh my gosh, I'm talking about begging here. You don't beg for something. That shoes is not the right illustration. That's apparently not a... You don't beg somebody for food if you've got a house full and a refrigerator of food. Let's do that one. That one's easier. Okay? He's a beggar. Now come around. Come around. This guy's a beggar. He's a blind man. And he's a broke man. See, blindness has nothing to do with being broke. But yet it does. Because he can't do this and he can't do that. He can't see. It's affected him financially. But do you want to know what else has been affected by his blindness? His identity. Here we go. Here we go. We don't even know who this guy's name is. We don't even know who he is. Because his name has been replaced by his condition. Now, I don't know if you're this or not. I don't know if this has anything to do with you or if you've ever experienced this. But, Jock, you know, losing your name is a lot to lose. That's a lot to lose. A bad name will close doors for you that you hadn't even gotten to yet. I mean, by the time the future becomes your present, and you have met the people that you're needing to meet, they already don't like you because of a bad name. What was your name replaced by? I mean, was your name replaced when they talk about you? Do they use your name or do they use words like jealous and angry and smart mouth and offensive and depressive and negative and territorial and hateful and witchy? What kind of name do you associate that person with? See, the name has been lost and replaced by your condition. Ooh, this is way. But on the other hand, a good name will open all kinds of doors for you. A good name will open doors for you that you ain't even wanting opened. I want to tell you something. The devil has been after your name for years. He might be after your integrity. He might be after your finances. He might be after your marriage. He might be after all kinds of things in your life, but I know for sure he's after your name. Because if he gets your name, if he can get your name. But let me tell you something good. God is in the restoration business. God is in the redemption business. He can turn that thing around and give you a new name. Have you ever gotten into something that ruined your name? Have you ever met somebody who took you down a road that cost you your name? You got to fooling around with somebody that you knew you shouldn't have been fooling around with, and all of a sudden your money is dwindling, your name is being smeared, your standards are lowered, your health is declining, your conscience is being weakened, and your integrity is smaller, your character is broken, and it's gone missing. Your kids ain't respecting you. Your parents are mad at you. Your sister won't speak to you. All because you were hanging around with somebody who helped you sabotage your name. Jesus. This man's illness, this man's situation, his blindness has affected his entire world. But it's affected his identity too. And when they couldn't find anything else wrong with him, they started depressing. They started asking him over and over and over again to retell the story. Tell the story again. And he said, look, I've already told you the story. We're like, well, tell it again. And then they take him down to the Pharisees, down to the church leaders. And they're like, tell me the story again. I mean, it's like he was being interrogated. They weren't even interested in the fact that this man could see. This man just undergone some kind of a miracle that could have turned that town upside down. And they didn't even take interest. They were just using him to attack Jesus. The Bible mentions that Jesus did this on the Sabbath. And because he healed him on the Sabbath, they have now concluded that he's a sinner. A sinner because he rubbed spit mud in his eyes? Seriously. When the enemy uses somebody to attack you, they need to have a way to categorize and justify their attack. Once people put a name on how they hate you, once they give it a name, it's justifiable. They want to find a category to put you in so they can hate you better. When they realized that it was on the Sabbath day, they said he was a sinner. And when they called him a sinner, the blind man said, I don't know. I don't know whether he's a sinner or not. I don't know whether he's a sinner or not. All I know is that when I met him, I was blind. When I met him, I was blind. This is all I know. All of these questions, all of these distractions, all of this perverted and twisted conversation going on in the air, all these attacks that I don't even know what's happened, but this is the greatest day of my life. And there's something coming against me. I should be in celebration with my family instead of interrogation. And whatever this is that's happening, and you've cornered me, all I know is that when I met him, I was blind. And when he got done with me, I could see. I could see.